Yeah, so this is the bread and butter of my family's store. I studied hand engraving in Vicenza, Italy, and that's a skill that I took years to study, and I still think that people, when they say I'm an engraver, they say they practice engraving. It's like many arts, it takes a lifetime pursuit to really get to the level that you'll never achieve your own satisfaction, but it takes a life pursuit to dedicate yourself. So I focused in on engraving when it came to me in a stone setting class in my schooling in Vicenza. I went to a government arts and crafts school, as you know, it was training leather makers and wood carvers and metalsmiths. And so many of these metalsmiths in Vicenza would go on to work in the many different factories of production in northern Italy. But me, as a student, I was bringing the skills that I learned there back to my home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So my family, we have one store, and this is absolutely one of the bread and butter things that as soon as I make one, it's gone in a few weeks. It's a low profile setting. It's very secured. It's done with a ring blank, so there's no casting. It makes the setting wear like iron compared to a cast ring because there's no porosity. It engraves and polishes beautifully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. I have a 2.2 millimeter silver ring blank, and I'm going to show you with some 2 millimeter Swarovski cubic zirconia how I would go about setting this up. So I'm just going to get a couple of the 2 millimeter out. I will also say this, in the diamond instructing world, diamond setters, they want to feel like they're like mad scientists and only they understand how it works. This is a skill. This is a skill that can be taught, and this is something that if you trust the process, you will achieve very good results, but it takes practice. People, they try something immediately, they're not good at it, and they just move on. They want something faster. If you trust the process and you get good instruction, then you're going to be a successful diamond setter. So what I do is I use the most important tool on my bench here is my carbide dividers. And these dividers have carbide tips. And why is that important? Because carbide tips are far more accurate than steel tips. Steel will blunt, carbide will chip. So if it's not sharp anymore, you can see the chips with the microscope and you can see it's time to resharpen your tool. So with these sharp carbide tips, I'm able to make extremely accurate measurements. Some people prefer to drill right on where the dot is made from the divider. Some people prefer to go in between the dots because they'd prefer to see how close they're getting to each other. So it's up to you. There is no rules, and there's no math. That's the other nice thing. So if I was going to set up an eternity band like this French set ring, all I have to do is have my dividers and measure the stones, have the right stone measurements, and then walk it out. If I get close to where the next stone is going to be, with my dividers, there's a little spring inside that I can flex the divider legs just like by driving it into the metal, flexing it out and pushing a little beyond where that previous mark was. So now it's not moving the legs, it's just stretching them just a fraction of a millimeter. And then you keep going until you hit the next dot. Does that make sense? So what you'd want to do is first just start off by making those dots. And since I'm only going to set like, a few stones, I would go ahead and use a carbide tip punch just to get my drill something to bite into. I need to tighten this up. And this isn't my bench, so forgive me if I'm not as speedy or as accurate as I'd like to be. And this isn't even my carbide punch, this is just what's sitting on the bench here. So I studied with Alexander Sidorov in Antwerp, Belgium. I did the 3-month optical diamond setting course. So you learn optical diamond setting, everything by microscope. And when we talk about classic pave, it's using gravers. It's using tools like this, chisels that are cutting, hand cutting prongs, hand cutting seats for diamonds. That is what we do. So, gonna get a drill here. I would usually use either a little bit of cutting oil or something. Just gonna have to use beeswax. Just a little lubricant on my drill to make sure it's not gonna break. And I would normally drill through, but just for this demonstration, I'm just gonna try to get through this as quickly as possible. So all I've done is just drilled a little bit, not all the way through, enough for supporting the culet, not touching the bottom of the setting. That's the most important part. Because if the culet's touching the bottom, then it's never going to be set straight. It's always going to be wobbly. So now I'm setting 2 millimeter cubic zirconia. They're exactly 2 millimeter. So I'm going to use a 2.1 millimeter ball burr. Can everyone see? We're able to see? I'm using a ball burr over a setting burr. A lot of people ask, why are you using a ball burr over a setting burr? Because if we use a setting burr, first off, the hole has to be dang near the same size as the bit. But a ball burr, if I go at it from this direction, from this direction, from this direction, it's still leaving the same mark, which is a benefit because you don't have to be directly above the setting. So this is what I was taught in Antwerp when I was learning from Alexander. Yeah, this silver is a sticky sort of thing sometimes as you're drilling it. Whoops. So the areas around the seats of where these diamond seats are going to become the prongs. And we don't want the stones hanging off the edge. That's why I've got this ring this size, so it would accommodate those stones. The stones aren't going to hang off the side, and it's going to be a nice, clean setting. Boy, I'm a little turned around on this bench. Bear with me. I'm sorry about that. I was looking for a way to just kind of get rid of all this. There we go. All right, so now you're able to see it a little bit more. So all I've done is I've drilled the holes. I have 5, and I'm gonna just gently on the sides, I'm gonna make these little half circles just for an area for the chip to pop off as I'm engraving the sides. The facets I'm going to hand engrave, and this little half circle on the side just gives the chip of gold somewhere to kind of flake off and come off with ease, I should say. So you can see all I've done is I've just literally on the sides just done like a little half circle just underneath where the ball burr is. Going through here again on the other side. So French setting is a low profile setting, gives you a little bit of flash. The thing about it is sometimes it's not fast enough. So we have another type of setting, it's called castle. And castle setting is little U-shape gravers, little round gravers that all you'd have to do is just cut with the chisel into the setting with this round carbide graver. As you can see, it has a mirror finish on it. Then you have a mirror. When you have a mirror finish tool, it leaves a mirror finish cut. So if it's polished brightly, it'll leave a bright cut. And what I'm going to do is, now that I've got the sides where I want, I'm going to lay the ring on its side so I can start engraving the French set facets. So I prepared a little thermal lock vice grip to kind of lay it on its side. I have different attachments in my own studio at home, but I thought this would be the best way to show how you could go home and just thermal lock. You can get it for like, a few dollars for 5 pounds, and it'll last for unlimited uses. And you can just use it just the same to hold that ring that I already pre-made for this thermal lock. So it's steady, it's sturdy, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to my Graver Max. I use a G8 every day. It's my workhorse on my workbench. I'm a diamond setter, I'm a hand engraver. I do a lot of inside ring engravings of script font. If you want, I can do a quick little demo of, actually I have a plate of a hand engraved J. I did a large J on one side with carbide tools. As you can see, it's leaving that mirror finish. And then I did kind of a pendant size version of Johnny, and then like an inside ring engraved version of Johnny right there. I'll pass this around. If you want to just come up here and grab that, you can pass it around. People can take a peek. So that's done with carbide tools. This is also a carbide tool, and it's just a V graver that has flat sides. It has a very highly polished mirror finish to it. And all I'm concerned about is that cutting edge, that very tip, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and start this. We'll see if I can get the camera to the point where you guys are able to see a little bit more. Maybe it's too close. Okay, that's as good as it's gonna get. Some people are really surprised that, that there's minimal effort here. You can do this all day without fatigue. I used to hand push engrave. I used to hand push diamond set, and the fatigue of your upper back and your right arm of pushing all day, and many times they have optivisors, so they're bent over, and all of that comes to this like agonizing pain at the end of the week. And once I was introduced to the modern tools in Belgium, I accepted that, well, this is a much better way for longevity to work. It reduces your fatigue. And in the end, it's still hand engraving. If I put the graver down on the bench and I push the pedal, it doesn't do anything. The hand engraved part comes from your hand guiding the tool. This is like using an air chisel, okay? So if you're Michelangelo nowadays, are you going to still use a hammer and chisel, or are you gonna also use both? Are you gonna use both methods? Because there are things that I have in my repertoire that I still hand push engrave. A Florentine finish, for example, is very subtle and it's very light finish, it's very surface level. So I hand push that because it gives a different look. And people that know jewelry, people that understand quality and time that it takes to do that, they understand what they're looking at, and they know that that takes a lot of time. You're not taking a rotary and just going zip and then handing it to you and saying it's Florentine. It's not. So what we're doing here is hand engraving. And this is, it takes time, but it's a skill that can be taught. It's a skill that can be learned. And it's something that you could make a whole career just on doing French set rings. You could make a whole career on just repeating a same pattern of an engraved pattern on a ring. And it's up to you to see how far you want to go with that. So I'm just going to continue. I do, for consistency, I do all of the French sets on one side. I do all on the, this one side for consistency. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the left side for consistency. I'll do this. On one side, I'll do the French set facets, and on the other side, I'll do the castle set, so you guys can see both. So I'm going back and I'm making sure that every line is straight. I've done this pattern so many times I don't have to lay out where my lines are going to be, because a lot of people are like, how do you know? But as you can see, we're getting to that mirror finish part. So when you do it like this, you save a lot of time at the polisher, a ton of time. And when you get that split really nice in between the two prongs right there, nothing looks like it. Not a casting is ever going to be that sharp, because it has to be a hand tool that goes in there, or a very sharp hand tool. Okay, so I'm going to do the other side. And I do these in like 3 shaving cuts, because if you try to do it in one cut, it would actually, instead of cutting the metal, it would tear it at the very end. So if you're doing it too heavy, it's too fast. But with repetition, I'm telling you, I can do a French set ring in 2 hours that would normally have taken me, maybe the entire day to do. And just like anything else, it's a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. I would struggle with inside ring engravings. I would take them on, and it would take me an hour, or maybe an hour and a half to get, a name or a date, with, maybe 10 or 12 characters. Now, I can do that same thing in, 12, 15 minutes. Boom. And then it's ready to go. So once you have this in your toolbox, it's kind of like riding a bike. It's riding a bike. It's yours for life. So I skipped one. And go ahead and ask questions. If you guys have questions, please just shout them out so I can help engage with you. I know this might be a little boring for some. Yeah?
When you're marking out the stones, you're using the compass to...
Yes, the dividers, yeah.
The dividers?
Yeah.
How much farther wider than the stone are you doing? Are you doing it exactly...
That's a very good question. Again, it's something that when you teach, you have people that are more math-minded and they want to hear a number. Then you have other people that are like, okay, I can do it your way, of just eyeballing it, because if I put a number to it, it's going to be different for when we go into micro pave. It's going to be different for when we go into larger stones. But if I was going to put a number on what I'm doing here, I'm going to be at right around like 2.15 or maybe 2.2, okay, if we want to put a number on it. And I don't normally do that just because it depends on the ring size, it depends on the whatever kind of stones we're setting. But that gives you an idea. We're setting 2 millimeter, 2.0. I would be at that like 2.1, 2.15, 2.2, around there. It's a great question.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
When you're doing like a full eternity ring and you're marking it and you're getting around to the other side and you're like slightly, like when you get to the end, there might be something that like, it's like 2.3 or 2.4 when the rest are like 2.2.
Okay.
What are you doing? Are you just drilling the holes more compensated to get back to even out?
I'm gonna eyeball that distance and see if I can get closer to the next stone. If it's too close, then I have to keep going. I have to keep going by stretching the dividers. Like I was saying, you dig this tool has a spring in it. So if you extend the bottom leg just by forcing it from the top, it'll drive just a fraction of a millimeter beyond that previous mark. And you keep doing that until you achieve the next dot. Now the tricky part of that is remembering which dot you did the second time. And usually it's the heavier one, so you can see it that way. And all I did there was I just cleaned the top edge with a round graver, and you can see it's again a mirror finish. And as you can see, we've got it now, so it's already sparkling even before there's stones in there. So what I would do next is I will take a little emery paper and give it a light little pre-polish. I have a very high grit. I wouldn't normally have a grit as high as this, or excuse me, as low. I would probably be around like 1500 or so. What's this doing? It's also deburring a lot of that engraved surface area, because we're at such a profound depth. It's just going to have a little bit of metal, kind of like a snowbank, pushed up onto the edge. So by emery papering it with a very fine grit, 1500, 2000, whatever you want to do, you've gotten that up to a pre-polish now, and you've sharpened that line. Okay, we're doing the other side. This is the faster of the two. This is castle setting. And I noticed that I don't have a round graver that is really the right size for this. Let me see. I'll give you the idea of the look. This graver needs to be resharpened. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to sharpen a graver real fast. There's two methods. You either do it by hand with a flex shaft, or you have a power hone kind of a fixed sort of method that gives you very precise angled measurements. I'm a diamond setter and I'm a hand engraver, so I do both depending on what I need, but for this, all I have to do is be in the ballpark. So I'm just eyeballing the measurements. I'm putting generally about a 45-degree face on the graver, just with my gray roughing stone here. This is carbide. So we need diamond tools to polish carbide. So I just roughly hit the face to remove that chipped area. Now I got the yellow diamond polishing wheel, and I'm gonna do the face. I go up to a higher velocity for the final the final polish. I want that mirror finish. I got it. And then I'm just gonna rotate my graver in my fingers by just twisting it in my fingers, and I'm getting that cutting edge polished right there. Okay, and this is good. This graver is good for short, straight cuts. Short, straight cuts. That's all this graver is good for. So different widths are going to give you different results. If I'm using a wider one, it's not going to be as kind of V-shaped at the bottom, but you get the idea of how quickly this is. This is my fourth. Here's my fifth. So it cuts very fast. And the end result, you can see, boom, boom, boom. It gives a very nice, so I tell my students, try to keep your hand at the same angle, so as it rotates, it's going to light up, bing, 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 on the same sort of style. And this adds a little bit of a handcraft to the piece, which is very appropriate for wedding bridal jewelry. You know, seeing that there is some slight human errors to it, it makes it more unique. Because when everything's just 3D printed, I make 2 rings or I make 3 rings. They're slightly different. You know, here and there, it's slightly a little different, but you make 3 rings on a laser or a CAD, they are literally the same. Okay, so in between the stones, I saw something pop up and I thought it was inconsequential, but maybe it's not. Okay, so in between the stones, we have to remove this metal, and the fastest way to do that would be with a cylinder burr that just is going to get a lot of material removed quickly. Everyone able to see? Thank you. So I teach diamond setting, I teach hand engraving, and I teach individually at my own workshop, and then also I teach at GRS. It's a school education center that they have at their facility. They have 3 classrooms. It's in Emporia, Kansas. And yeah, if you're into individual lessons or if you're into a group class or something like that, let me know afterwards and I can give you more information. Okay, I have to first make sure that messy bottom of the ball burr, it moved a lot of silver. I don't normally work in silver, but it just created a kind of slag over the pilot holes that I needed to have for the cullets. And like I said, normally I am going to drill all the way through, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm just gonna leave it at that. The very end, I'm gonna use a straight graver just to create the little area that's gonna turn into the prongs here. I'm gonna knock out. Whoop. Wrong graver. So I'm going to be getting ready to start setting my stones. If I want to go one step, I'm just getting these little areas here that need to be picked off with my graver. If I want to go the next sort of level of quality with this setting, what we can do is we can use the Graver Max to polish in between the stones by just using a round graver and cutting in between the diamond seats. Like here, I can take a round graver and it leaves a polished mirror finish on the bottom. And when I'm setting in white gold, if I'm setting colored gemstones, this reflected, beveled area between the stones reflects the body color of that colored gemstone. So if you're setting rubies, pink diamonds, sapphires, in that white gold, it's going to reflect the body color. So what's better than that, you know? You can see it a little bit in my ring. If you'd like to see my ring after this, I'm happy to show it to you in person after the demonstration. As you can see, I have various different colored stones here. And as you rotate it, you can see those colored stones' body colors reflected in the bright cut. Okay. Drop it in, give it a little push right on the top of the table, gently. Now, if I was setting larger than 2 millimeter stones, I would want to square off my table so that the diamond is not like, you know, just dropped in there, but it's like you've squared up the table. So if you look at it, all the tables are up in a nice little row. And with larger stones, you can really tell the difference. If you're below even 2 millimeters, pretty small. If you're at like 2.5, you can definitely tell if the tables aren't squared up. Yep. Here we go. One more, but you know what? I'm going to save that one for last. I'll revisit it because I just want to show you guys what we do after this. So the last part here is what I'm, not the last part, I should say. The next step is I'm going to push with my beading tool the bead onto the stone itself. It needs to be the right size, and this one is too small, so I need to get the next size that I think it might be. This one's a 4. It's pretty big, actually, maybe more like a 7. Let's try an 8. Okay. So I've made the prongs so they are easier to push. All I'm doing is I'm taking this little bit of metal and I'm using this beading tool and I'm pushing that first bead just gently directly into the stone. And I don't want the stone to move. If the stone starts to move, I stop and I reset the stone. I make sure that it's pushed and it's not going to be moving. But all you're doing is just a light little push to the stone. Not worrying too much. We're just wanting to hold it in place. Then this is where the heavier push comes in. On the opposite side, give it a heavier push. And that stone shouldn't move. If we've done everything up to this point correctly, it's not going to move because it's already been set in essentially like a glove. So to go back, the fourth prong is kind of a medium one again. And then you return back to that first prong that you first pushed, and you make sure that it's nice and set this time. That first push was just that gentle, make sure it doesn't move. Okay? So from here, the next step would be cleaning in between the prongs. I pinch it in between my fingers here so it doesn't go very far. Okay? If you touch a diamond with a carbide tool, you better be careful because you can definitely chip a diamond with a carbide graver, okay? A diamond, it can be chipped very easily with carbide, so be extremely careful if you're going to use carbide. If not, use steel, and then you have no worry of touching a diamond. If you have a steel graver cutting in between the prongs, it's not a big deal. Okay? So we got these set like this. The last step here is to divide in between the prongs with a V-shaped graver. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Lay it on its side. And I do it in like a series of shaving cuts just because if you do it in that one heavy cut, sometimes the result isn't as good as you want. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. But there it is in the camera. Here we go. Yeah, thank you all.